Welcome back into CBS Sports HQ, getting you ready for week 2 of college football. We've got some good Friday night games coming up. Louisville at UCF, and then Boise State trying to figure out its quarterback situation, visiting New Mexico. Let's welcome in two of the guys behind the Cover 3 podcast. We've got Chip Patterson and Barrett Sallee here. Let's start with Louisville at UCF. Louisville coming off a bad loss to Syracuse, underdog again in this game. The Knights are favored by 6.5. The total 151 and a hook. Barrett, where you headed?
Well, I'm taking 2 of them in this game. I'm throwing a ton of money at this game. I don't understand why UCF is only a 6.5-point favorite. This is a team that we saw is a perfect Gus Malzahn team. John Rice Plumlee, who led the SEC in rushing in 2019, was flat out awesome for them in their opener. And apparently I missed the part of the Louisville-Syracuse game where Louisville had a functional offense. So I'm taking the under as well because I don't see Louisville scoring that much. So you're asking UCF a lot. They're going to shoulder a lot of the load if that over is going to hit. So I'll take the under, and I will certainly lay those 6.5 for UCF.
So at first I was looking at this and I was thinking Louisville can't be as bad as they were against Syracuse, right? I mean, we know Malik Cunningham is a functional quarterback, and we know that they use the transfer portal to be able to beef up some of their skill position players. They were sloppy. There were mental mistakes. I am willing to consider that Louisville is going to be better, but not enough to take them and the points. And so I will be attacking the total. I will be trusting the Cardinals offense. And I think that we are going to see Malik Cunningham and the Cards have a much better performance. Barrett's 100% right that John Rice Plumlee is the perfect quarterback for this Knights team. So I'm going to be taking the over on the total.
Let's head to another game Friday night, Boise State at New Mexico. I will be there, so all of you should be watching. Lobos coming off a shutout win over Maine. Boise State, as I mentioned, they got to figure out this quarterback situation. They benched Hank Bachmeier in the second quarter there, bringing in redshirt freshman Talon Green here. Boise State favored by 16 and a hook on the road. The total is 46. Chip, what do you say?
I'm going to lay it with Boise. I thought Green looked all right, and you would obviously like to get a little bit more from Bachmeier, especially having seen his ceiling. I think that playing New Mexico in this spot is the perfect get-right situation for a Broncos team who probably had its ego bruised a little bit. That game against Oregon State got out of hand so quickly, and the players on this team and the players in this program are expecting so much more. I think New Mexico is a team from the bottom of the Mountain West, and I believe that you'll have plenty of time for anecdotes, Amanda, because this game will be out of hand early. Lay them with the Broncos.
Yeah, I'm going to lay him too, Chip. And I think this quarterback situation is really interesting because the quick hook on Hank Bachmeier can mean 2 things. 1, he was awful all fall and they knew it was coming. Or 2, he just was having a bad game and they trusted Green to be a difference maker. So I think it might be the latter. Look, Green was put into a terrible situation. It was almost impossible to come back in that situation. But Chip's right. He did look good at times. And if he builds off of that, I think he can be a functional quarterback. 16.5. I do think Boise State is going to win this by 20 or more. I think a lot of people are looking at the quarterback situation for Boise State and thinking it's a negative. I don't think it's necessarily a negative. I think, in fact, it could be a positive long term.
Both have faith in Boise State there. Let's recap their picks for these Friday night games we've got coming up here. Barrett loves Louisville at UCF. He says he's going with the under and UCF. Chip likes the over in that game. But lock agreement when it comes to Boise State to cover the 16.5 on the road at New Mexico. CBS Game of the Week, Colorado at Air Force Saturday afternoon. Air Force winning its first game of the season against Northern Iowa. Colorado falling to TCU 38-13. Colorado's first visit to Falcon Stadium since 1974, even though these two schools are just 85 miles apart. Let's welcome in Chip Patterson and Barrett Sallee here. Air Force, that first game, 5 players with 75 rushing yards. Only the second team to do that in the past 22 years. It is always a test for these Air Force opponents. Chip, Colorado is going to try to have to control that run game. Not sure if they're going to be able to.
Yeah, and it doesn't look good after what TCU was able to do on the ground in that win against Colorado. They're going to have to really go in, and Carl Durrell's staff are going to have to find some answers because we know exactly what Air Force wants to do in this game, and it is going to be to run the ball. You know, whether it's Zeke Daniels, whether it's Brad Roberts. I mean, there are so many options. You mentioned 5 players all getting in that season opener. And so I look at this matchup and think that Air Force has one of its best teams in quite some time. They've been playing well over the last couple of years. Colorado has taken a step back even from where they were last year. That's why we see Air Force as a nearly 17-point favorite in this game. You're not used to seeing that with a Pac-12 team and a Mountain West team, but given where Air Force is peaking and where Colorado is slumping, that's why this looks like such a mismatch.
Yeah, I love this Air Force team. 3 touchdowns by running backs or 70 or more yards last week. That's the first time that's ever happened. And Brad Roberts, when he goes for 90 or more, they're 12-1. Alongside Zeke Daniels, who was over 100 yards rushing and passing. This is probably one of the most dynamic Air Force offenses on the ground we've seen in a very long time. And look, we can always say game 1, whatever, but they play a lot of cupcakes in game 1 or game 5, and they have never done several things that they did last week. It's a record-setting performance, and I think you might see it again.
All right, so offensively, when it comes to Colorado, though, they are splitting time between 2 quarterbacks. Chip, how well did that work during the first game, and what do you think it's going to look like during this one?
It wasn't great against TCU, and I think that JT Shrout, you're giving him the opportunity. You brought him into the program. Brandon Lewis is what you know, and Brandon Lewis does provide an effective piece of the ground game that is clearly his part. But where some situations, like, I don't know, Michigan, you have 2 very good quarterbacks that are getting in the game and providing lots of thrills. I think that this is one where you've got to continue to look and see if you can commit to one of these players. I like what Lewis is able to do because of his versatility, but Shrout clearly is the better thrower here. So I think that this is going to be a very tough test for the Colorado staff to try and figure out how much longer they want to roll out 2 quarterbacks, because the longer they keep this going, the more difficult it's going to be for one of them to really get into a rhythm.
All right, so Air Force, big home favorite here. Chip Patterson, they're favored by 17. The total is 45 and a hook. When it comes to service academies, we often like the under when it comes to those games. But given what we saw from Air Force that last game, not really sure. What do you think about the total in this one?
I'm going back to the well, Amanda. I'm doing it. We're hitting the under in this game. And it is looking at Colorado and asking Colorado to answer the call. You have been challenged here. You were looked at as a massive underdog against Air Force. What are you going to have the answers for? And the best thing that I can consider is that this Colorado defense is going to step up, knowing exactly what Air Force wants to do and have a big improvement in the run game. But that said, Air Force is going to run the ball with some success. That means the clock is going to continue to churn. I don't think they're going to be hitting those 70, 90-yard touchdowns that we saw in the season opener. So that means we're going to have fewer possessions in the game. So I see this playing out where the game ends up going under thanks to Air Force's rushing attack and a Colorado offense that just isn't really functioning well right now.
Yeah, Chip, Service Academy unders, that's the name of the game right now. And when you have a quarterback situation at Colorado that is so unsettled, how are you going to score on the limited possessions that you receive? So I think you're going to see Air Force grind it out a little bit, and I just don't trust Colorado's offense. Look, I think Shrout probably should be the guy because he at least provides a little bit of the downfield passing attack. But if it's not, if it's Lewis, then the clock's going to drain even more because he's the runner. So definitely rock that Service Academy under. I think it hits with ease here.
Chip and Barrett, we appreciate it. It feels like we never left. The season fully underway now, week 2, getting ready for those games on Friday night. On Saturday, though, that is your game of the week for CBS. Colorado at Air Force. First time Colorado has visited Falcon Stadium since 1974. Air Force will look to continue to roll Saturday, 3:30 Eastern on CBS. You can stream it on Paramount+. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.